All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the seventh episode of the Reason Secular Roundtable, and I am Prototype Atheist. I'll be hosting tonight, and tonight we are going to be discussing the role that religion plays in politics, given the recent election that we had here in the United States. We figured it was a pretty pertinent topic, so we'll be just discussing some various aspects of that and giving you some different perspectives on that issue. Before I start off, I'll just go ahead and shoot it over. Everybody can kind of introduce themselves pretty quickly, and then we'll get started. So go ahead, GE.
Hi, I am the Godless Engineer. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of those lovely, nice socializing places. Do go on there and find me, talk to me. I love conversation, and I have several groups on Facebook that I encourage you to join and join in on the conversation.
I think it's me. All right, so I'm Chris. I am one of the admins at Philosophical Atheism. You can reach us on Facebook at Philosophical Atheism, or Twitter, we're at PAtheism, and YouTube, we also have a YouTube channel as well for Philosophical Atheism. I like to focus on more of a humanitarian aspect of things. Yeah, just look us up. We'll be more than happy to get some deep discussions going on.
Some call me Tim. I run Literal Bible Man and my own author page, and I help John administrate GE and post there, and generally cause trouble and strife for religious people online. That's about it.
I was unaware that you run the Literal Bible Man page, so I have to give you props for that because I've been following that for quite a while. So I do enjoy that myself. So yeah, if you guys are unfamiliar with that, please check it out on Facebook, the Literal Bible Man. It's good stuff. Anyway, so go ahead and jumping into the topic here. Obviously, this was a disappointing election, I think, for anyone who's a secularist. There's, a lot of very religious people who have been elected in office by the, representing the party or represented by the party that kind of attaches itself to fundamentalist Christianity here in the United States. But not totally unexpected, given that this was a midterm election, and those kind of tend to keep the other side away for whatever reason, just apathy or whatever reason. Definitely, churches can get their people out to vote, and we all know that, especially in the South and the Bible Belt, definitely churches and religious folks tend to side with the Republican Party. Certainly, that's not the case all the time, but I think overwhelmingly so. And in fact, there was at least a couple cases where I come across the news. I know the Friendly Atheist had mentioned one of them, where churches were basically telling people who to vote for. In fact, one of them had one of their members was running for some kind of office, so they basically just handed out a sample ballot with all the candidates that they wanted you to choose highlighted. And this is a problem because churches, they have their tax exempt status, and in order to have that status, they're not supposed to do any politicking, at least not promoting or endorsing specific candidates. They can do certain things, but there's limits on that. And this isn't anything new, but it seems like they've gotten a lot more brash and open and bold with it, and they're just, they don't even care. They're just like, we're going to do it. So, this is a big issue because people, first of all, it's against the First Amendment, really, to be doing that. And the IRS should be enforcing this issue, really, to stop these churches from endorsing candidates or handing out sample ballots to people, because they should not be having tax exempt status if they're going to do that. So actually, the Freedom from Religion Foundation last year sued the IRS in order to get them to actually enforce these rules. And if churches were going to be doing this stuff, they could lose their tax exempt status. And it seems like they're still kind of overlooking it or not paying much attention. So we'll see what happens in these instances, because the Freedom from Religion Foundation the court ruling did go in their favor, and basically the IRS said that they would, do a better job of enforcing these rules as far as churches and religious tax-exempt organizations doing this politicking. So we'll see what comes out of that. But, we saw that Ben Carson just threw his hat in the ring for 2016 right after this election, so he's kind of the first one out there. And he's somebody who his stance on homosexuality is obviously very much influenced by his Christianity. He has called homosexuals, like pedophiles. He has said that homosexuality is some grand agenda conspiracy to divide the American people and to create a new world order and things of that nature. So it's just amazing that somebody like that can legitimately be a candidate for the highest office in this country, having opinions like that are rooted specifically in religion. There's really no non-religious opposition to homosexuality or having marriage equality or anything of that nature. And to have somebody just out in the open, blatantly just giving those positions, and people are just like, oh yeah, you're right, we'll vote for you. It's just crazy. And I saw an article too that, given the Republican takeover of the entire House and the Senate now, they might possibly be electing Ted Cruz to be the chairman of the Science Committee. That's a possibility, which is just insane, because these people, they deny climate change, they deny evolution, and to have somebody like that as the head of your Science Committee is just patently absurd. That it would be like having Bernie Madoff being the chair of your Budgetary Committee or something. It's just insanity. And these people have no problem with it. They think it's the greatest thing. So, it all kind of ties into, for me. I did a video on this a while back called Skepticism in a World Conditioned Against It. And basically, I just discussed about how when people are raised with religion and believing in these fantasies and these myths and accepting them as actually being true and not bother questioning them, that they basically not only have a lack of skepticism in general and as it extends out to other areas, but they also tend to be skeptical in the wrong areas. So they tend to accept things that aren't true and then be skeptical of things that are true. And it's really, I think, a problem. And I think it ties all the way back to religion, people growing up with religion and not bothering to question things that they're taught and just accepting the first thing that they hear. And I think that has a really negative influence on our culture, and I think that shows up when we have elections. As you can see in this last election, it seems like we're making progress, but it's still a tough battle, and we really need secularists to get out there and vote and be open. And, I'm not saying that all secularists or all atheists are voting Democrat or anything like that by any means, but I'm just saying if secularity is something that's important to you and keeping religion and state separate is important to you, then I don't see how you can be aligning with the current Republican Party given their stance and their platform on many issues. So I think that's pretty much my piece on it. I will go ahead and shoot it over to Godless Engineer, and we'll see what he has to say about Suzanne Atanas.
Yes, Suzanne Atanas. I don't know if you guys remember Suzanne Atanas, but Suzanne Atanas was the lovely politician that looks a lot like Danny DeVito. and she actually thinks that God is punishing America and the human race in general for supporting homosexual marriage or marriage equality.
Wait, John, just real quick, I'm sorry. Is that the lady from Chicago? Just a quick.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. She thinks that God is punishing the human race for supporting marriage equality by giving us autism and bad weather and all of these things. And she does it citing verses from the Bible. She uses the Bible to support these claims. And even though in the interview that I'm referring to, the people on the board are sitting there like, and you think that God is actually doing this? Even though they're talking to her like she's insane, she's not that much different than most of the other Republican politicians out there. Because they have these really wild ideas of what science is or what science says. And then they try to use these archaic notions about our reality, and then they try to insert them into modern society. Like Prototype mentioned Ted Cruz being on the science board. I don't know if you really realize how scary that is. This man has been in the news so many times for saying so many stupid things about science, yet he is made like head of this science board in our politics. He is actually going to be making fucking scientific decisions for our country. And this is a man that denies climate change in the face of substantial evidence. Now, you might want to think that these people are outliers or that they're not part of the general population. While their extreme views may be kind of outlandish and in the outliers, a good portion of the political body is made of these people that hold God at the highest, at the highest peak of not morality, but of respect. And they want to use what is in the Bible to make our laws for this country. And if that doesn't scare you, it should. Because they're falsifying history. In Texas, they want to write down in the history books that Moses was the first American. Can you imagine what that means? They want to totally rewrite history and say, oh, yep, Moses, that guy, that fucker that parted the Red Sea, which couldn't really happen scientifically at all, not to mention the fact that there's no evidence for Jews being in Egypt whatsoever. Yeah, he was the first American ever. See, this is the kind of thing that we're going against when we have people like this in these positions. Now, I want to be clear, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush, that not all Republicans think this way. While I disagree with Republican positions on things, I don't think that all Republicans are this insane. But the pure fact that people like Susanna Tannis were actually allowed to run in these elections is just fucking sad. The fact that Ted Cruz is actually being put at the head of a science committee is sad. We don't need these people in political office, yet they are in political office. They are in positions where they can get elected into positions of power, where they can legislate these things, like where they can legislate that preventing autism is a good reason to prevent people from getting married. They could possibly legislate these things, and using a book that was written 2,000 years ago from multiple anonymous authors that was basically a plagiarized book full of lies is not a way to base a society on. Yet these people want to take this book and take it at face value and actually create laws and use rationality based on it in order to shape our lives for the future. And that is the power that religion has, and it can exert itself on our society. Because if you were to take religion away from these people, yeah, sure, they would still have these crazy ideas. This woman would think that something else was causing autism, or that us supporting marriage equality was causing autism in some way, but we would be able to really recognize her as the batshit crazy woman that she is. We would tell her to go back to Hollywood and keep impersonating Danny DeVito on the sidewalk. We wouldn't be giving her a position of power where she could actually legislate laws, and we would be, it would be easier for us to determine that she is actually batshit crazy, instead of us making concessions because she believes, like, she's got this deeply held belief. It's just ridiculous that a deeply held belief is actually given any kind of credence in our society. So, I encourage you that if you see any of these Republicans or anybody in general, even Democrats, even independents, whoever, if they try to use the Bible, which I know society already does this already, but I just want to reiterate that you really need to post this on social media or whenever you hear about it, you really need to re-emphasize how ridiculous these things are, how ridiculous it is to think that God is punishing us with autism for supporting marriage equality. We need to criticize these ideas. And I know in my little rant here, I've kind of criticized Susanna Tannis on her looks and whatnot like that, but that was more for comedic effort. What I'm really criticizing is her whole idea. It's the whole idea of the crazy Republican that's using the Bible and these crazy notions and the threat that it poses on our society, because these types of people are in positions where they can make laws. So that was kind of my 2 cents. So I'll hand it off to, I guess, Prototype again.
Yeah, I'll take that over here. Luckily, Suzanne Atanas did not win her election bid, but she did come out with, I think, somewhere in the mid 30% as far as votes. I think she was like 36, 37% of the vote. So, it's not like she had no chance at all. She got a lot of support, and that's kind of the problem, that many people, and, obviously there's pockets of the country where you have a better chance of getting people to vote for somebody like that. But yeah, that many people would support a candidate that has said such outlandish things like that, and actually probably agree with her on a lot of it is really nuts. And like you said, these religious ideas, if it wasn't religion, if they didn't have this taboo or this special treatment for religion, these ideas would just be roundly criticized, and these people would just be laughed out of politics. But that's not what happens here. If we were like an Islamic country, somebody might say, oh, we're being punished for letting women wear bikinis or something like that. And it's just, it's whatever their dogma is. They try to play it to their advantage for, to gain power and to gain influence, basically. And so it is pretty ridiculous. So with that being said, I will shoot it over to Chris, and we will see and what he has to say about this, and basically what his perspective is.
Alrighty. First off, I just want to throw it out there that there's a whole other separate issue, but Fox News is single-handedly probably the most devastating thing for our country when it comes to politics. As I recall, the other day they actually had one of the Duck Dynasty people on there talking about what we need to do for foreign affairs, and even though the average person is, I like to think that they're smart enough to be like, yeah, that he has no merit to be discussing these issues. People listen, unfortunately. But anyway, to get into my segment there, I'm basically going to talk about why faith itself why religion itself is dangerous, mainly because of its faith aspect. Unfortunately, when people have their freedom of religion, which, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for freedom of religion, but your right to your individual freedoms ends whenever someone else's freedom is affected. Whenever we have religion stepping up and they are placing their needs so that they have their views on education, whether it be for evolution, shunning different sciences, things of that nature, wanting to push creationism in schools, whether it's affecting women's rights, whether it's civil rights, like when we had the black and the women's movements a long time ago, where they were fighting for equality. They pushed the Bible was at the forefront of all of their arguments for why we need to instate it as law that that we should be able to persecute these people, or why we shouldn't be, and why we shouldn't be doing it. So primarily, people are using it as their. Oh, hang on, let me turn this off real quick. People are primarily using it as their catalyst for whatever bigotry they want to be pushing on other people. If you take religion out of it completely, you wouldn't, none of these things would even be issues. You look at things like gay marriage, that would completely be a non-issue if it wouldn't be for religion, because marriage was around long before most of these current religions are even out there. But yet they like to tout that, again, like what they were saying earlier, we're being punished because we're allowing for that. Which, by the way, if Moses was an American, I'm sorry, that's great. I love that. I think they should run on that platform. That would be so much easier to go against them with. But they also like to warp the history on things like, oh, our founding fathers, this is what they wanted for us. This is what they wanted. They wanted us to be a Christian nation. That's what we were founded on. But in all actuality, if you go back in history, that's exactly what we ran from. The religion and government started getting too intertwined, and that's why they made it a point to say, look, everyone can have whatever religion you want. Everyone can say what you want. They did all that for a reason, not so that you could have one religion. We're not a theocracy. We're a democracy, or actually we're a republic. But people use their religion to try to push that as the catalyst for why we should be how they think we should be. But if you look at how all the super religious countries and nations are ran, things like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, it's mostly Middle Eastern places that are heavily influenced with religion. They're terrible. They got the worst things of every. I mean, they're worse in civil rights. They're worse in the economy. Worse in healthcare. I mean, it's awful because they base everything off of their religion, and unfortunately, the religion itself contradicts itself. I don't care what religion it is, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity. I don't know too much about Buddhism, but I guess it really can't do too much damage. I guess, but you never know. Okay, and I'm also going back to another point. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. The vast majority of the U.S. is actively religious. Churches are tax-free, and yet they have a heavy influence on our voter population. Down here in the Bible Belt, specifically, we have like mega churches that are going on with thousands of people, multiple services every day. It's an active part of every community, and it's almost seen as a status symbol for a lot of people. For as to what church you're in, even if you're not even actually doing anything to make the world a better place, just going to a church makes you at least feel like you're like you're helping. So whenever your pastor gets up there and says, oh, we're being punished because we allow for these gay people to get married. We're being punished because I think someone said something about autism is here because of us. Like autism didn't exist before two guys kissed. Like, what the crap is that? But then if we try to step up and we say, hey, you can't legally do that, and the IRS starts pushing paperwork forward, and they see that they've lied about their being like a charitable organization and nonprofit and things like that. And they're filing one way, yet they're going a completely different route. And if we try to step up and say anything, they're like, oh, they try to throw their constitutional right to exist in there, like, oh, you're stepping on our religious freedom. No, we're not. You can do this, but you're filing completely different. If you're going to remain in that status, you can't be preaching for the pulpit essentially. So let's see. They also have a bad habit of warping current events. I hear it every day. Oh, they're taking God out of the classroom. Oh my gosh, I swear I get sick to my stomach when I hear that. No one's taking anything out of the classroom. Just because we can't have a teacher lead it, which we shouldn't, that doesn't mean it's out. If your child still wants to go pray, they can go pray. There's no atheists I've ever heard of that will ever stand up and be like, yeah, no, we shouldn't even allow that. No, I've never heard of one. Needlessly supporting other nations, things like Israel, they'll blindly follow them no matter what is going on. Even if Israel decided to get a nuke and decided to nuke China, they'd be like, we need to support Israel. Why? Because it's in the Bible. It's like that's foolish. Like, you can't just blindly support people. So therefore, it shows you that religion is very clearly affecting people's proper judgment. And then if they and they also encourage us to go to war with other nations that are of opposing religions. So if we're fighting with, say, Iraq, Afghanistan, something like that, like we were, what is the media touted as? It's Muslim terrorism, Muslim terrorism, this. What's being bombed? Oh, Christians are being persecuted over there. It's like they push it so that it's getting the religious community upset, which is the largest bulk of the voter base. And what do they push for? More war. So it's just an endless cycle of how religion is pretty much a mind game, and they're being played like puppets. They use your holy books to justify whatever bigotry that they decide, while ignoring other likewise morals. For example, things like being able to stone someone for working on a Sunday, or that it's okay to rape someone or enslave them. Yet they won't say anything like, when it comes to something as simple as like divorce, even though it's mentioned more times than homosexuality. It causes their moral character to shift off of what the normal morality would be. And unfortunately, it's all based off what many of us believe to be fairy tales because it just lacks evidence. We really think about it. They got things like, they actually believe that there's a guy who lived in a well. They believe in talking snakes, virgin births, which I guess that actually does happen, but they're never born male; it's always born female. Global flooding, and yet they view that word as invaluable. So they feel like they can use it to justify whatever that they want to do because it says in the Bible this, it says in the Quran this or that. So it convinces them that they're doing good while they're actually committing some of the most hideous crimes against humanity. Hitler, for example, he had full support of the Catholic Church. Most of Germany was a religious state. The Pope told the African people that condoms were wrong. As not a direct result, I'm not saying this is completely on the Pope, so don't take it for that, but it definitely did not help. But because of all the lack of support that followed afterward, and the lack of information and proper health care, we had over 24 million Africans that were infected with AIDS. And in the absence of a medical miracle, nearly all of those people died before 2010. 6,000 more people die every day, and about another 11,000 are infected every day as well. Then you compare that to what we're currently worried about with Ebola. It also has people thinking that it's okay not to be like an anti-vaxxer, which hurts the population as a whole when it comes to our healthcare systems, and it actually affects more than our own politics. That affects the entire world. You got other hate groups like the KKK, which I don't know what they're currently labeled as, but I would imagine they would still be labeled as a hate group. But you think about it too. Whenever you're convinced that there's an afterlife, you have no problems with killing other people, via bombings or flying a plane into a building, for just as an example. And one of the worst things that I think I've seen with religion in our current events, going back to 9/11 again. So, and this is not specific for the United States. This is for other nations as well. But religion convinces people that God is on your side. So no matter what we're going to do, if our president gets up there and says, oh, God's on our side, he immediately gets reverberated, support from most of the American people. We don't know. If there is a God, we don't have any clue if he's on our side. For all we know, if it's another religion that we're going up against, well, they think the exact same thing. Yet we can't justify any of them. So why are we basing our decisions off of this? And on my last point, I just want to throw it out there too that almost all religions prophesize of the end of the world, and I don't think I feel comfortable letting people base our policies off of things that actually look forward to an end time. I don't want the world to end. I want the world to be in peace. I don't want to keep going being like, well, judgment's going to happen. Judgment's going to happen. No, it doesn't have to happen. We can stop it. We can make the world a better place, and we don't need your religion to try to tell us what to do. If we all know what's right and wrong, we don't have to use religion, which really brings up the question: is if you are religious, is it really worth it? And on that note, I'm going to pass it off to someone else. I think I'm out of time. So.
All right, yeah, thanks for that. A lot of really good points there. You mentioned that these people who want Christianity to be really intertwined with the government, and they want to base policy and laws on that. That's pretty much what we declared independence from England for, was to get away from the Church of England and their imposition of religion onto everybody. So that's a really important point, because the people that think that we're supposed to be a quote-unquote Christian nation think that that's what we should base our laws and morality and things on, when they fail to understand that's what we were trying to get away from. And you did mention a bunch of different countries that are very oppressive, that have theocracies, mostly Islamic. I don't know that I can think of really any other country, at least, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, or if you guys think of something, but any other really like industrialized nation that has Christianity really, that has as much of an effect on their government or politics as we do in the United States. I know that Russia, at least with their stance on homosexuality, definitely is up there. So, sorry, I'm getting a little feedback here. So as far as Russia, they're maybe like the closest thing out there, and that's not something that I don't think we want to be associated with. I mean, some of the people here might be as far as how they view homosexuality and all that, but yeah, it's definitely unique here in the United States, and I know in like UK and some European countries, they've really become a lot more secular lately. A lot of people are stepping away from religion, but they're also having a lot of issues now with Islam trying to come in and influence things. So they got a little bit different thing going on over there. You also mentioned Israel, and I agree with that. As far as Israel goes, I think a lot of the just 100% unwavering support for Israel from our country comes from the stance of Christianity from religion. Not to say that the Palestinians or Hamas or whoever is always right, or that that I support violence on either side. Certainly, I don't. But we are very hesitant as a nation to criticize Israel or to not support them, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Christians in this country want Israel to be victorious, to win, to prove that their God can win. They want the temple rebuilt so that Jesus can return and fulfill their theology, or their prophecy about the end times and all that. So it has a very big impact on that, the religion in this country. And one last thing I want to mention there too, as long as we've been discussing equality for the LGBT community and all that, is that it baffles me that what people do with their genitals, or who they sleep with or have relations with, would be so important to the creator of the universe, especially given the fact that people can be born with indeterminate sex or gender. For example, if somebody has an XXY genotype, or somebody is born with both testes and ovaries, they don't have a sex that fits into a rigid definition. And a lot of the times these people, especially before modern science, wouldn't know if they were a male or a female. So how could they possibly be punished for something they have no control over? And that's not even to mention, obviously, all the scientific evidence to show that homosexuality is not a choice, that it has possibly an epigenetic cause, or maybe environmental cause in utero. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Tim, and we'll see what he has to say about this subject.
Well, I know I feel safer from Ebola terrorists, but I think there's a twofold thing here for atheists to be concerned with, and the separation of church and state is definitely important, because we need to do whatever we can to keep the wolves at bay as far as theocrats who want to enforce their laws on the rest of us. But the problem we have in our society, I think, is the way we treat ideas as a culture and a society. And a lot of times we take a lot of heat as atheists because we challenge people's beliefs, and we're seen as troublemakers or disrespectful. But the problem that we have is that many of us can not only see the harm of religion, but we can connect people's beliefs with problems in society that are causal, not just correlated. And we can actually show how this is affecting not only our future as a nation, but because our nation has such an impact on the world as a whole, how we're affecting the future of our species. And let's see here. I wrote something on my page the other day about that, and when people would say, like, when you condemn someone's beliefs, I said, I don't think I would say I condemn people's individual beliefs as much as I see the framework of social thought underpinned by an irrationality that takes form in a cognitive failure to apply critical thinking, which results in religious and cultural practices that don't comply with a comprehensive view of the universe around us. In other words, we have people that just aren't educated. They haven't taken that step forward. We've learned through science that we're the pale blue dot. We've learned the perspective that's given us to humble us and show us our place in the cosmos, but a lot of people aren't there yet. They still think we were magically created in a garden. That leads to Pew studies, like the one I have here, where Jesus Christ returned to earth in the next 50 years, is something that is a belief held by 41% of the country. So when you're talking about people voting and their priorities, if 41% of your population, I think this is something Sam Harris covers in his books, that believes that, then how are you going to be motivated to take care of the environment? How are you going to be motivated to fix global warming or climate change? In fact, you know, you talked about Fox News, Kristen, and I actually met at my job. I met a guy who goes on Fox News as a commentator for climate change, and he told me that he's more objective than the scientists who receive government funding because he's paid by a corporation. So that makes him objective. I mean, these people are so convoluted in their thinking. They don't even. I think Dunning-Kruger, if you ever hear that, it's like they're so stupid they don't even realize they're stupid. And that's a problem, because how do you operate in a society where you're like 10 to 20% of the population, and you see these problems that need fixed, urgent problems, and the beliefs of so many people in the society are driving the political system in the wrong direction? So I think that the tough thing for atheists is we got to do the separation of church and state thing, but I think we need to be more firm on how we treat ideas as a society and as a culture. We need to go to our friends and our family and people around us and say, listen, this coexist bullshit just doesn't work. And not in the sense that I don't want to control what you think, but I think we need to look at each other honestly and say these ideas are bad. Christianity is a toxic idea. It's a self-destroying, self-esteem destroying belief that externalizes any hope or good within you onto the religion rather than out of yourself and your fellow man. And it causes you to look at each other with suspicion rather than hope. And that's what we need. We need a society where we have ideas that are challenged and given merit based on their credibility, not on their past history. And to do that, we're going to have to be a little abrasive sometimes, or at least we'll have to take the, you know, like Batman in the Dark Knight, we'll have to become the bad guy to be the hero in some ways, because these ideas need challenge. We're going to meet people that don't like it, and we have to be firm in it. But I think we need to be compassionate as well, because a lot of these people we would hate, they're trapped in an ignorance that a lot of them can't find their way out of. I'd like to think that, I said the other day that I think that most of this country is lost inside of a paper bag. I mean, it's when you hear some of these guys talk, like Ted Cruz and this Susan Atenas and this guy in Colorado, this whack job that got elected to the Colorado State House. These people are so far up, but people vote for these people. So it's not just the people we're electing, it's the people that are voting for them, which means it's our friends and our neighbors and our families that are the problem. And it's our fellow Americans, our fellow citizens that are the problem. And that's something that the connection a lot of people are comfortable making, because nobody wants to be the person that goes to their best friend or their family and say, listen, I think you have an idea that's toxic to society and that's destroying our species. It's like Daniel Dennett said, there's no kind way to tell someone that the belief that they've had their entire life is bullshit. Paraphrasing, of course. So I think we just need to work as a community, as atheists, to find the most constructive ways, but without giving up the tenacity of challenging these ideas, and try to be firm but be compassionate in the way that we approach this, and because we're destroying the planet we live on. You know, I talk about the end of the world. Well, we're going to make the end of the world if we don't shape up. It's going to be the end of the world if these ideas aren't combated and they aren't driven out of the political system fast. I mean, climate scientists are telling us we're already too late. It's already fucked. The only thing that we can do is make it less fucked. So when it comes to, like, when you're looking at this as a whole, I think that there's a bigger problem with not just one religion, Christianity. Not because you'll find atheists who believe that climate change is wrong. I think there's an irrationality that is a result of just a lack of consciousness raising on the part of lack of education, and that we need to help be a part of as in our societies and in our neighborhoods to help people see things from a different perspective. Bring a friend over and show them Cosmos. Give them that perspective. You don't need to tell them their religion's bad. Just show them what they can see if they just open their eyes, because it's way better than religion. There's a big universe out there, and we can explore it if we want to. But if we just sit on our ass and we wait for Jesus to come back, we're going to die of starvation or disease or whatever plagues end up destroying the world, a world that is not respected by the people that live on it because they're not driven by any motivating factors to make the world a better place.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there as well. So thanks for chiming in with your opinion and perspective on that. Um, yeah, that you mentioned that guy in Colorado. That's Gordon Klingenschmitt, who I meant to mention earlier and had failed to do so. So now we'll make sure he gets his due. He has a TV show called like In Jesus' Name or something, and he's virulently anti-gay, anti-homosexual, and just all around Christian whack job. I'm sure he has other crazy Christian opinions as well. But yeah, he actually got elected, I believe, to the Colorado State Legislature, and I know Colorado does have some definite pockets of Christian influence, especially around like Colorado Springs and that area. So again, there's people out there who agree with these people in significant numbers, enough so to actually elect them to public office. So that's what we're up against, and we have to address this. You also mentioned Fox News, and again, going back to Ben Carson, basically once he announced his candidacy, they pretty much cut ties with him because I don't know if there's FCC regulations or something along those lines, but basically they would have to allow equal opportunity for opposing candidates to appear on their station. So if they had Ben Carson on, now that he's officially a candidate, they would have to have somebody from the other side, an opposing candidate. And of course, being Fox News, they're quote unquote fair and balanced, but we all know they're not. So of course, they're just, instead of giving the other side, they're just going to cut him out and cut ties with him and just not present anything, because of course they can spin everything how they want to anyways. And they play a large role in this too, because anytime stuff comes up, the Freedom from Religion Foundation challenges something that's going on, or there's some issue, it's always the war on Christmas, or it's the attacking the faith or something like that, and they always frame it in those from that perspective, and it's always an attack on religion. And rarely do they ever give an atheist or a secularist the chance to actually have a say on there. I know that like David Silverman's appeared on Fox News occasionally, usually around like the war on Christmas and stuff like that, but he's always with some Jewish rabbi, and then there'll be that Catholic priest on there. I think he's a priest, but so he's always got a couple people to go up against. But a lot of the times they don't even give us the chance to state our opinion, and they have a lot of influence. I mean, I know their average viewer is like a man in his upper 60s, but even that, they're influencing a lot of those people, a lot of the older generation, and even obviously there's younger people too that will be influenced by that. And they basically succeed in just getting the fear and the paranoia out there in general, so that people are talking about it, so that it's not at the forefront of people's minds. The Ebola and the war on Christianity and all that kind of stuff. People are discussing it, and they don't think critically about these things, and they just take it at face value. Oh yeah, I'm being persecuted, I'm under attack. So that's definitely part of the problem. You also mentioned the Dunning-Kruger Effect. That's always a good one. That's basically the situation where people think that they're more knowledgeable about something than they actually are, so they'll sit there and fight with somebody who actually is an expert on something or knows what they're talking about, and then they'll sit there and claim that they know what they're talking about. You're an idiot, you're brainwashed, you're the fool, and they just have no idea at all that they are wrong, that they are incorrect, because they think they have the right information. So you see this in climate change denial, you see this in creationists, and basically in just a lot of theists when they're arguing in favor of their religion. So yeah, again, a lot of good stuff there that you covered. I'd like to continue the discussion a little bit here. Obviously, there's a lot of Christians out there in the United States who aren't fundamentalists and who will vote a more liberal agenda, or vote, align more with the Democratic platform. And also, so if we can, we'll just go down the line in the same order that we did before. You don't have to kick it back to me or anything. We'll just go down the line. If you each kind of want to talk about a little bit about, how you feel about that. Do you talk to Christians who are more in favor of secularity, or in things that, in topics that you agree with, positions that you take politically? Do you kind of align with them? Do you take them on as allies in the fight against the more fundamentalist, people who want to intertwine church and state? And also, how important is secularity to you, keeping church and state separate? Obviously, in politics, there's a lot of different issues that you might vote on. And so, to you, where do you gauge secularity? Where is that for you? Is that like really super important? Is that like the top of your list? Do you vote, mainly on that? Or is there kind of, do things kind of blur together, because a lot of the positions on things like homosexuality or abortion rights and things like that kind of intertwine with religion. So if you guys just want to go ahead and discuss a little bit of your perspective on that, we'll start with Godless Engineer here.
Well, as far as the Christians that support secularity in our government, and secularity in general, I tend to stand by them and really kind of show my support, because while I do disagree with their belief, um, as far as the actual situation of our government goes, I feel that we are on the same side, because we both want a government that stays secular, just like the way that the founding fathers wrote our Constitution. They don't they generally aren't the pushy type of Christians. They're not generally the type of Christians that think that you need to adhere to their belief system in order to function in our society. So I generally will I guess side myself with them for the purposes of the discussion at hand being a secular government. Um, but that doesn't prevent me from calling the Christian beliefs, calling bullshit on Christian beliefs, of course. But then again, that doesn't ever really come up because they're not the pushy type of Christian. So, I've always held the position that as long as you don't try to push your position on me or anything like that, then we're good. We're gonna get along just fine. And to be honest, most of the people that I work with are that way. Now, most of the people that I work with are located in a separate room, and while I worked in that room, I would insert myself into these religious conversations, and I would get into a lot of heat. But once I moved out of that room, stuff became a lot, I guess, nicer with conversations and whatnot. Because, I mean, they would spring up these religious conversations and whatnot, and they were very much not the, we're not going to push our beliefs into the legal system. Now, on to the second part that Brendan mentioned, which was how important is a secular government or secularity in government to me? It's very important. And as far as secularity in these elections and candidates and the ruling body, I've always held this position that if a certain candidate's position relies heavily on God or the Bible or anything like that, if it includes religion in any kind of way, and that would include anti-religion as well, you need to immediately dismiss that person as being a candidate. You really just, in my own personal opinion, you just need to not even think of that person as being eligible to run for office, because they obviously aren't adhering to how the Constitution is constructed, how our government is constructed, and how our government should really be ran. So, when the presidential elections come up and the candidates start talking about God or whatnot, I really think that if any certain candidate starts speaking about God, you just really don't even need to vote for them. And I can't recall in the last election, but I don't think in the last election, not all the candidates referred to God in any, in the entirety of the election. But I could be wrong. So it's very important to me that our government stays very secular, because the fact that what Prototype had said earlier in the hangout or in the show, of the fact that we left England we separated from England. We declared our independence from England because they were pushing religious beliefs on us. Like they were pushing, the religious faith on the colonies, and we weren't being represented properly in England. And so because of that particular situation, we were like, we need to part ways. So the fact that they're wanting to restart this cycle of getting religion into politics and so heavily entwined into it that we just have like possibly another revolution or something, or maybe we just become another theocracy, which, by the way, I will point out, a lot of candidates and current political representatives, they want a Christian theocracy in our government. And there are a lot of Christian apologists out there that are preaching either from the pulpit or just on their own time, and they're preaching and they're encouraging people to vote for a theocracy, to turn our government into a theocratic government, and that's just a horrible idea. And so keeping our government secular, keeping God out of the government, just like the founding fathers wanted, because they did have God on their minds when they wrote the Constitution, because they wrote God out of the Constitution. That's how you know. But I think I've went over my time, so I'll hand it over to Chris.
I am so glad you went over on your time, because I actually don't have very much to say on this particular subject. All right, so my experience with religious people is mainly that in the workplace. I live down in South Carolina, so I'm very much in the Bible Belt. People they tend to herd a little bit, so we have a lot of people down here like I'll go into one of our rooms whenever wrapping up with a case or something, and they'll all be in there talking about specific issues, something like abortion or illegal immigration, things like that. But yet they have this kind of a condescending way that they're talking about people. And whenever I step up and I'm not going to get into my specific beliefs on these things, but like if I go in there and I oppose them and I'm like, well, maybe that, like, what are you basing this off of? And if they start firing off that, oh, well, it says in the Bible this, or it's just wrong. I'm like, well, why is it just wrong? If I find that down here, if you push them, they always default for the reasoning behind everything, like what their backbone on everything is their religion, and that's. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand why they do it. I mean, that's kind of what religion touts to be. Is supposed to be your moral compass. But there are so many questionable things that happen in there that you really have to wonder if it's even worth basing your values off of that. It's like someone was saying the other day whenever I was talking to him. I asked him why he kind of picked over like the good parts of the Bible and why he was ignoring the negative atrocities, things like condoning rape, things like slavery and things of that nature. I was like you're glossing over all of that, and you're basically saying, oh well, it's all about doing good to one another. It's all about the New Testament, and the fact of the matter is the Old Testament's still there. It's still it's still supposed to give you your premise for why the New Testament is. I'm talking about Christianity specifically, of course. Why it's founded how it is and how it so you can have a proper idea about how things unfold. But a lot of the stuff that's in the Old Testament doesn't come back up in the New Testament to be countered. So like you take the issue of rape, and and it doesn't come back up. It's left exactly how it was in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it doesn't really discuss rape. So whenever I start bringing it up with other people, it hurts me whenever I hear that people are basing everything off of that, because if they're picking over the good parts of the Bible and leaving it and kind of glossing over the bad parts, that implies that you have a sense of morality that supersedes that of what you learned in the Bible. Why? Because you're picking the good parts. You know what's right. It's like you're choosing to block out what you deep down what you know is wrong, and you can't take that kind of you could take that kind of a mentality out of it and be like, I know what's proper and how we should be treating our sick. I know what's proper and I know how we should be treating our our immigrants, our elderly, our working class people, people who are everyone that's represented, whether it's a child getting their education, or whether it's a senior citizen getting their meal, how we treat our prisoners. It's like you have a base sense of morality that is separate from the Bible, and you don't need a Bible or a Quran to really guide you on what you think you should be doing with things. But people down here, they tend to herd a little bit, getting back to my main point, and they're very loud about why they stand for it, but yet they can't really back up for anything other than it says in the Bible why they think that it's wrong. But once you get them all separately, they tend to start breaking down, and they become a little bit more logical about it. You get rid of that mob mentality of just mindlessly going forward with something, and so which brings me to a point that I was reading about whenever I was taking sociology, is that the people are dumb, but individuals can be smart, and unfortunately, when it comes to most of our media, they appeal to people, not the individuals. They appeal to your gut visceral reaction towards why things are wrong, and not towards what's right and what the stats show, and what the proper way of actually doing things is. Which is why I personally stopped voting Republican, because that's a biggest chunk of what they were doing to me, and I realized I wasn't basing my decisions off of actual information. I was basing it off of, oh, this is wrong, and that's what all it was. Now, going back to the other question, how important is secular government to me? It's incredibly important, because, again, going back to what I was saying during my speaking session, I look at other theocracies. I look at how it's so hard for me to word this, because just because you don't have a theocracy government doesn't mean you're going to necessarily have better morality. You're still going to have terrorism. You're still going to have people breaking things like the Geneva Convention, things like that. But and you'll have the thing like what they were doing over in China with killing off some of the young. It's horrible. But at the same time, I just want an objective secular government. I want someone that says, "Hey, if you want to be a Christian, cool, be a Christian." We're not going to, as a nation, we're not going to acknowledge a God. We're not going to mandate that our children, whenever it's around about public tax dollars, is going to be forced to learn about your God. We're not going to we're not going to deny people civil rights based off of any one group's belief in a God. It's like and whenever you step up and you say, "Hey, you can't do that to people," they like to scream, "Oh, well, you're blocking our religious freedom." But what they're not taking into consideration is that your religious freedom is hindering someone else's freedom. So, with all that being said, I just want an objective secular government, so someone that bases all of our information off of what's right. For what's right and what is wrong, and not what a book says is what's right and what's wrong. We know where we base our morality off of, and we've looked at history, and we all agree that whether or not God has anything to do with it or not, we can easily pick apart what's right from what's wrong, and blinding ourselves with a God, it just seems like an extra handicap that we can avoid giving ourselves. I'm going to give to the next person. I kind of went over as well. Didn't think I would.
Well, I like to take that idea of morality and religion versus science and reason a little bit further, because I think what the problem is, the conflict we're having in our society and the change that we're going through collectively as a species, is that we're realizing that the answers that we came up with in our ignorance are not the best answers. They're not the best answers for morality. They're not the best answers for how to live your life. And in fact, many of the traits that are positive that religion has hijacked are a result of evolutionary adaptations from being a social species as a primate. We empathize with each other because of the development of mirror neurons in a social group, so we can understand each other and communicate. It's an advantage, which has the byproduct of producing moral behavior within society, because if you aren't able to get along with your fellow apes, well, you're not going to survive very well. So the way that we treat things too, like I know that the biggest problem for a lot of people, especially in the field of psychology, is the idea that we don't have the free will that we used to think we do. Science has pretty much shown us that the way that we previously understood free will doesn't exist. In fact, there is no such thing. We are just a on a basic level, a bunch of mathematical computations inside of a neural net that's developed as a result of years and years of compounded evolution. And that's scary to some people. But if you're looking at making a better world, and where people take care of each other, and where you have a truly moral society, and you try to do that with religion, where you have dogmatic beliefs that are based on archaic ideas that are ages old, and you try to force that upon the framework of an evolutionary biology that doesn't quite fit with that, you're going to end up suppressing and repressing our humanity rather than exemplifying it. And that is, I think, the true damage of religion. In a world where science is coming up with better answers for the questions that we've had. In fact, science is answering questions that religion could never even touch. And I think that scares the people that hold that as a security blanket for their fear of death, their fear of mortality. Because I think that's one of the things that drives religion. We all want to think we're going to live again, or we want to see our relatives, and it's a nice thought, but the baggage that comes with that is just so toxic that it's destroying us. It's destroying ourselves. It's destroying our humanity. It's destroying who we are. It's destroying our discovery of who we are, because that's what science really is. It's just a discovery of ourselves and the universe and each other, and suppressing that in a place of dogmatic faith and religion is dangerous on a level that could cost us our existence as a species in the future. And the problem that you have with this is like, oh, that's so dramatic, but you can look at the way that people think and the way that these ideas affect society, and how science can answer questions that religion can't. And I think we're at a crossroads between faith and religion, and religion and science, and faith and reason. It's not just about religion versus atheism. Atheism is just a word that we use, like Sam Harris. I love that quote. He says it's just a noise reasonable people make in the face of so many unjustified beliefs. I'm a human, and I want to know what that means. And these people are getting in our way. And to say that seems so offensive to some people. It's like, oh, you don't respect my beliefs. You're such a dogmatic fundamentalist atheist. No, it's just throughout history, I don't disrespect religion. I think it had a place. I think it was a stepping stone. It was training wheels. And we're big boys now and big girls. We need to take off the training wheels and learn to walk and ride on our own. It's time. It's time to be a little bit uncomfortable and see what's next, or we won't.
All right, yeah, thanks for that, guys. I appreciate it. As far as me, I think that secularism is really important. I put it pretty high up on the list of things, but at the same time, it's also kind of intertwined with kind of the platforms that the two parties that we have right now put out there. You know, like I said, things like their position on marriage equality or abortion rights, and you know, the justifications they use for opposing those things are pretty much rooted firmly in their religious beliefs. And so it's one and the same for me. You know, secularity is getting that religious belief out of our policies and out of our government. You know, if it wasn't for their religious opposition, you might be able to find some secular opposition. I know there's, you know, some atheists out there who oppose abortion and things like that, so I don't want to paint with a broad brush or anything. But certainly the vast majority of the people who take these positions are religious, and they point to their religion. And of course, you know, on the other side we have Democrats, and obviously there's a lot of Christians there. There's a lot of people that believe in God there, and they don't hide it, and you know, they're out there with it, and it's always coming up in the discussions of politics and things like that. You know, we even had Joe Biden not that long ago telling ISIS that we were going to chase them to the gates of hell, and that really pissed me off because, you know, it's saying that kind of stuff is just inflammatory, and you know, it just gives the Muslim extremists more reason to kind of paint us as the United States as a Christian nation, and that this is a holy war. This is Christianity versus Islam, and it kind of only stokes those tensions, in my opinion, when you say stuff like that. Because, you know, you're getting into all this religious imagery and language, and to say that we're going to chase them to the gates of hell really makes it, you know, a religious issue to me. And so that's why I want to get secularity into our government. I want to get all that stuff out of our policies, out of our government. If people want to believe in that stuff on their own, that's fine. Just keep it out of the official business of the government as was intended. And I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up here shortly. I want to say that one thing that we can definitely do to address this issue is to come out as openly secular. If you're a secular person, you don't even have to be an atheist. You can be a religiously secular person. As long as you believe that the church and the state should not mix, as long as you believe that no religion has any business dictating policies in the government, you are a secular person. That's what secularity is, a neutral stance by the government. It isn't promoting atheism, it isn't promoting godlessness. Secularity just means the government does not take a stance on religion. So basically, it's going to give everybody either equal opportunity to state their beliefs within the framework of the government, or it's just going to say, hey, you know what, let's just keep all that stuff out and we'll just conduct our business without even mentioning religion at all, or a lack of religion or anything. So that's what secularity is. And openly secular right now, this week, I think until November 15th, is running a campaign called Remove Your Mask. And I've already put out my video. I've already come out openly secular. My name is Brendan Nelson. You can see my video. I'm openly secular, and I've come out. I'm not going to hide it. Basically, visibility is what it's all about. Normalizing atheism, normalizing secularity is extremely important. It's working for the LGBT community. They are getting rights because they're out there, they're loud, they're proud, and people are understanding that these are their coworkers, these are their family members, these are their friends. They're just normal people that want to live normal lives, and they just want to be happy. And so by getting yourself out there is a really important way to combat this, this intrusion of religion into government. So I will certainly encourage everyone to take part in this campaign. And that being said, I will shoot it over to you guys. Please go ahead and make any final comments you had and let people know where they can find you.
Can't hear you, John.
What? There we go. Thanks, Chris. So I'm the Godless Engineer. I have a channel on YouTube. Go there, check me out. Just search for Godless Engineer. Also on Facebook, I'm fairly big. I have a Facebook page. I have several groups. Just type in Godless Engineer to the top, and you'll just see the list of groups and pages just start piling up. And then I'm also on Twitter, Instagram. Instagram for if you want a little bit more personal view of the Godless Engineer. And I think that's about it. So please check me out, check my channel out, check everything out on Facebook. And I'll hand it over to Chris now.
All right, I'm Chris. But I want to cover two real quick things. One, as some of you guys that have been here for a couple meetings know, I just came out as transgender a couple weeks ago. This is my first on-air meeting, so I apologize for if anything's too uncomfortable for anybody. But I am who I am. So I was Tyler for Philosophical Atheism. I'm now Kristen for Philosophical Atheism. You can find us on Facebook at Philosophical Atheism, Twitter, PA Atheism. We also have a YouTube channel and a blog at philosophicalatheism.com. The second thing I wanted to point out is if you are interested in secular things and with regard to current events and politics and things like that, one YouTube channel, it wouldn't let me link it a little bit ago, but one YouTube channel I highly recommend. It is my absolute favorite of all of the channels I have ever been on. Is called Secular Talk. It's hosted by a guy named Kyle Kaczynski. Highly recommend that guy. I literally wait by my phone waiting for his post, and he posts a couple things a day. So, but anyway, check us out on Philosophical Atheism. We post quite often, and we like to focus a little bit more on humanism than we do hatred, as some other groups have unfortunately done. But thank you guys for tuning in with me.
Help if I unmuted my mic. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. Just put my name in. You'll find my author page. Literal Bible Man should be easy to find. Just put that in. I do interwebs, so I am there. Other than that, I think this is an important discussion that needs to be had on a larger scale. Unfortunately, our voices right now are muffled by the complacency around us, not only of society, but sometimes our fellow atheists, and I think we need to encourage fellow atheists to be more vocal, not to be more angry or more, you know, disrespectful and like truly disrespectful, but like and when I say that, I don't mean mockeries off the table, because I love to mock religion. I think it's fun. I just think we need to watch how mean we are to people, because these people are ignorant, and a lot of them are struggling with doubt. And if you're in that process, it can be very dangerous, as I went through it myself. And I think we need to realize that that these are just broken people a lot of times who are searching for an answer, and they're hurting, and they're people too, just like us, and they've been through it. I mean, many of us are former children of faith, and imagine, you know what it was like to come out of that. So when you talk to somebody that's in religion, even when you make fun of it, just remember that, because you can. I mean, it's a tough journey, and it's not easy for anybody to do. And the louder we are, the more we make people know that we aren't alone, the easier it will be for people to speak up. And if you can do that, do it.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, really good point there, Tim. I agree. We definitely need to be cognizant of the fact that, most of us as atheists were once religious, and obviously people respond differently to different approaches, and you just kind of have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with people, and understand that. Try to use the best method that you think would be effective with the person you're dealing with. My personally,
And I have failed in that too, by the way, I will say.
Yeah, I think we all do at times, because things can get the best of you, especially if you're kind of in extended conversation with somebody that's being really stubborn. It can be frustrating, and you just kind of have to some kind of step back and kind of remember that you were there once. I can personally testify that, I used to be a Christian, I was religious, I was a Fox News viewer, and so, I was there. I was kind of somebody that believed all these things that we're criticizing right now, and I can fully admit that, and I can admit that I was wrong, and that my way of thinking was incorrect then, and at least I've come to learn that, and I'm trying to help others do the same now, and I try to keep that in mind, that it's the goal is not to mock people and make fun of them. It's to educate them and get them to arrive at the same kind of conclusion that we did. We had most of us probably had people that helped us along the way. We certainly could have done things on our own to educate ourselves, but typically somebody else had an influence on that. But I think this was a good discussion, guys. I appreciate everybody putting in their inputs. We'll go ahead and wrap it up with that. Again, I am Prototype Atheist. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube. I try to put out a video about once a week. And of course, we do this Reason panel every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. So thanks everybody for joining us. Sorry if anybody was making comments on the YouTube. I didn't get a chance to look at those if there was any questions or anything, but we'll try to address any questions that might have been there later on if there were any. But again, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.